Korn, Jamila Rouser, Shawnee and Shawnell Gibbs, Vita Ayala, and I think Regine Sawyer. Yes. All right. So please welcome them to the stage.
What's up, y'all? Oh, who's got a puppy? Yeah, sorry. How is everyone? Did everybody enjoy the Black Comic Fest this year? Did you really enjoy it? That doesn't sound like you really enjoyed it. Did you really enjoy it? Well, thank you all for sticking around long enough to check out the most important panel of the entire event. I'm Karama, aka The Blurred Girl. I'm a contributing editor for Sci-Fi Wire, and I'm also a geek influencer, and I'm a big fan of the ladies that I'm sitting next to. Now, of course y'all said, you just changed your order on purpose. Here we go.
Do you want us to get in order?
To my immediate left, Vita Ayala. Now, Vita... Everybody in here has probably read something that Vita has written, if you've read comics in the past 12 months. They are very humble. Really, because you really could be telling everybody off right now. But
I gotta paint my rent. That's all.
But you've really had a lot of success in the last 14 months. They could justify, I'm joking, but I'm not. They could really be more cocky if they wished. Part of the first graduating class of DC Comics' annual talent development workshop, Vita's first published story featured Wonder Woman. Not bad for your first comic. And it's also not bad if you consider the fact that the career only got started in 2016. Since then, they've worked on Batman Beyond, Suicide Squad, more Wonder Woman, but it's been their work on the queer zombie story, The Wilds for Black Mask, that really put them on the map. Since then, they've written Black AF, Devils Die, also for Black Mask, Livewire for Valiant, Submerged for Vault, and the new Magic the Gathering Chandra for IDW. So, for those of you who keep saying you can't find women of color, marginalized voices that write comics, they're lying. Next to Vita is Regine Sawyer. Now Regine Sawyer is the owner, writer, creator at Lock It Down Productions, a small press comic book company that specializes in cutting-edge sci-fi and horror comics such as The Rippers, Ice Witch, and Eating Vampires. She is also the coordinator and founder of the Women in Comics Collective International, an organization that focuses on highlighting the merit and craft work of women working in the comic book industry. In addition, Regine has written various articles on race and gender in comics for Comic Book Resources, the Freelancers Union, Graphic Policy, and Time Magazine. Welcome, Regine. Jamila Rouser. Okay, so Jamila brought fans. She made all of them. Jamila Rouser is a worldwide influencer, speaker, writer, and fangirl currently living in Miami, Florida. She was raised around the world as a military brat, but she reps the Bronx. Jamila's been writing about geek culture for over 6 years through her own site, Girl Gone Geek, and the hip-hop geek outlet, Straight Outta Gotham. In addition to multiple online geek outlets, she's also one of the founders of Geek Girl Brunch, a global meetup group for geek women. And last year, after a very successful Kickstarter, she launched her own book, Wash Day, followed by Wobbly 3000, both through her own publishing company, Black Jose Press. Welcome. And finally, we have the Gibbs sisters. Now, I am going to introduce the twins together. Shawnee Gibbs and Shawnell Gibbs, and you're going to have to raise your hands. Shawnee, there we go, and Shawnell, because I can't do it. And our award-winning writing team from Oakland, California, with backgrounds in television, animation, and comics. The twin sisters and collaborators have created a brand of quirky, fun projects that have entertained audiences across the globe. They are the creators of the popular online animated series Adopted by Aliens and Old Ladies Driving, and the YA time travel comic book series Fashion Forward. Their adventure series, The Invention of E.J. Whittaker, which I happen to have just reviewed on my blog, is a diverse reimagining of the early 20th century. And it made its comic book debut last year. The Gibb sisters are members of the Writers Guild of America West, the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and the Organization of Black Screenwriters. Their combined credits include Food Network, Bravo, Discovery Network, National Geographic, and Disney. So my first question across the board is because you all got into comics
It's proved.
because clearly you didn't exist before that movie came out.
People forgot. But I thought that Wonder Woman was Puerto Rican because she looked like one of my cousins and she was wearing a Puerto Rican flag. And I was like, "Ooh, Mom!" And she was like, "Yeah, she comes from an island of like powerful women." And I was like, "Oh, bet, like Puerto Rican, cool." And so those were my two first comics that I can remember actively kind of like pointing at and getting, and I couldn't read them, but I would make up the stories and look at them over and over and over again. So to me, comics started brown, even though I was wrong about Wonder Woman. She broke my heart 10 years later when I was like 16, which was way too late to believe in that she's Puerto Rican, but she says Ola all the time, so. But anyway, that's what got me into them, and to me, that medium was always something that brown people existed in. You know what I mean? Which is very rare. You know, you watch TV, especially back in the 80s and 90s, and there was one kind of brown person and that was it. But I got to see, you know, Storm and Bishop and, to me, Wonder Woman be heroes and save people. And I was like, oh, I like that. That's what I want to do. So.
I got into comics when my father would read the Sunday Funnies to me. I would make him read it like cover to cover, even Kathy. Even Kathy.
You said even Kathy.
He would say, I'm not 4. Do you really want to read this? Like, yes, Daddy, read it to me. And he's so excited. He's like, okay. Like, I will read you Kathy. I will read you Gasoline Alley. Like, I'll read you whatever you want.
Wow.
And then from there, we would, I know hearing about this 35-year-old woman in midlife crisis, right? At 4 years old.
Look, they still stuck on the spinning rack, so you're bringing up comics that they ain't never heard of.
But from there, he would buy me Archie and Jughead and Betty and Veronica, and then my brother was like, well, you need to know about X-Men. And he'd get X-Men Classic for me, and then I started just asking for the books when I would go out with my mom to the supermarket, and my mother was like, why in the world? So my father's talking about Kathy. Mommy's looking through X-Men like, what is this? What is this? I'm like, don't worry about it, I like it. So that's how I got started, and I just continued to want more and more, and then I would draw out my little characters. I still have like my sketchbooks like from when I was 9 years old, and that's how I created some of those characters, and just continued with it, and then got into high school, and that's where I created the Rippers. I created the Rippers around 16, 17, and then I never looked back.
So I started late in the game. I started reading comics in college, which was about 10 to 13 years ago. Although they were always around me, my late Uncle Barry was a huge influence. He is a huge comic fanboy, had like vaults of, comics, took me to my first Comic-Con when I was little. So it was inevitable basically, but I started reading since I was in college. I think I grew towards like the more mature comics, so I went to Vertigo, Sandman, Invisibles, which was super weird, but that kind of gave me a taste of like what else was out there, and Transmetropolitan, and then I kind of went to a lot of the Image stuff, but I love anime, so I went to manga, and manga is a huge influence for me. I love slice of life, shoujo, shonen.
Well, your publishing company's called José. So.
It is. It's like Black women comics. José comics. I love like comics that are for like adult women. So I really was drawn towards José, like the José genre, which is for adult women. So that's some of my huge influences. I really like Inio Asano, who's a Goodnight Poon Poon. Kyoko Ozaki.
It was called the Afro Puff Girls, and they were Peaches, Pumpkin, and Precious. White people's still come up to us, about that, like back in the day.
I'm sorry, I still want to see that comic.
Right. It's available. It'll be like low, the dimensions, like low, super low quality, but it's out there. But just that language that we created between ourselves, and then that we use to communicate with, with our larger community and become supported in that. That's just how we've been, existing since then, since we were little girls, and it's working okay.
And I think for us, like when we were drawing and telling stories, our mom was also a single parent mom. I mean, she made sure that we had the tools, like we always had paper, we always had sketchbooks and all sorts of stuff. And I mean, that was a way for us to, we entertained ourselves first, you know what I mean? Sometimes we weren't even watching TV, we were just busy like creating stuff to just make ourselves laugh and all that stuff. Yeah, it was just a way for us to express ourselves, and we had fun, and we're still having fun now, which is amazing after all those years.
Now, there's a difference between including a black female or femme or LGBTQ character in a story and actually writing one from experience. Can you each describe a comic that you've created and how your voice makes it unique, or how you feel your voice makes it unique? And Vita, you're gonna have to pick one.
I'll go last. Let's start on the other end.
So I base it off of my friends and myself and my own experiences. That's how I kind of make sure that I feel like it's authentic. How do my friends talk to each other? Even when they're talking, like they're in the crowd and they're probably like, am I in the comic? They really want to be in my comic. But there's like moments and interactions that I think are really great, and I would love to illustrate or have illustrated in comics and shown in comics, because I want to show the experience and the interactions between people of color in comics in an authentic way. You can really tell when it's like a white guy who like is Googling what's the new slang and adding like lit in the wrong places.
Right. Hold on. To be fair, I don't know
see
slang.
lit or fleek, I know there's a problem.
But also I'm getting old, so I don't know what these kids are saying anymore.
Right.
So I'm like, is this
even
right?
my age? What my friends are saying, so that's how I just look around me.
I did the same thing with my books. I mean, in general, I like to say that most of the main characters have a little bit of me in it. Some aspect of my
Wait a
personality.
minute, even Ice Queen? Because damn.
Caramel, you should already know that. You should know. If anybody's familiar with that book.
Because she is not playing in that book, and she tears through some people.
Yeah, that's me. That is
It's like the word. That's the point.
If you know me, and especially if you're a member of Women in Comics, the members know how hard I fight. Like I fight for myself, but I fight for my members. So that's definitely reflected in that series, because she's the first issue. She's looking for her baby. And she's flipping out. She is flipping out. She's losing her mind. And I mean, I don't necessarily do that, but things are done when they're necessary. So I definitely put parts of myself, and I had a little bit of people that I know. In the series The Rippers, issue 2 has a conversation with the main character and her mother, and that's definitely me and my mom. Absolutely, both like two similar personalities but different. Arguing, but still respecting each other as they walk away. So that's definitely me and Mom.
How about you?
I think for me, especially the main characters of my creator-owned stuff, I am examining a viewpoint, and usually the main character's viewpoint, and whoever they're juxtaposed against, are two questions that I have in my own mind. And so the way that I kind of keep it authentic is by showing the struggle that I'm having internally on the page. And I think that, for me, one of the reasons that my main characters tend to be, brown and queer is because I'm working through stuff, and I want to show what I'm working through in a way that hopefully kind of engenders empathy in people. And so I think that that's where my authenticity comes in. I mean, I'm not always exactly like my main characters, right? But like, the parts of me that I'm being vulnerable are there. So yeah.
For us, I think we sort of write the kind of stories that we wanted to see when we were kids. You know, we grew up a lot consuming a lot of like Spielberg animation, and in the 80s and 90s, like we were always seeing stories where like boys were having amazing adventures, you know, and white boys mainly, and we would watch them and we would love them. E.T., you know, the Explorers, everything that Spielberg made and all sorts of stuff. But you're kind of watching as outsiders, and we just have to like kind of put ourselves into the story, like, yeah, I'm on the bike too, you know, with E.T. in the back, okay? I'm in the back. So it's like I'm not on screen, but I gotta like interject myself, I gotta put myself into the story so that I can enjoy it too. So I think as young black women, we were sort of watching as outs, knowing that we were outsiders, but also wanting to enjoy the adventure too. And so a lot of our stories, I mean, our first webcomic, Fashion Forward, which was a time travel adventure, you'll see like adventure, you'll see girls doing things that we hadn't seen them do before. Our first web animated cartoon was adopted by aliens, so we just wanted to see a black girl like flying in a spacecraft, you know what I mean? And she was from the hood, and she was like, she didn't know her parents, she was an orphan, you know what I mean? And these are the kind of kids who just sometimes don't get to have those adventures. And even with the invention of E.J. Whittaker, which is a steampunk story set in the early 1900s, we were just like, we never get to see like black women in Victorian pieces. I mean, normally when you're talking about the 1900s and black women, everybody's just like, oh, post-slavery, like people are sad, and it's like, no, people were also being brilliant and going to HBCUs and like becoming doctors.
Yeah, that's what's fantastic about your comic, is because a lot, someone was asking me like, it's so cool to see this fantasy world where black women in the 1800s were studying to be doctors. I'm like, that's not fantasy.
Okay, exactly.
But it's also like, they think that black people were invented in 1985. Like, it's just like,
Just popped
it was
up.
just slavery, and then we were abducted by aliens, and then we came back. And it's just like, now we were there, we built towns, and like,
There's a lot of struggle. It's like, we're just struggling.
can't we be happy?
Yeah. So, I mean,
It's like slavery and then boondocks.
right.
There's something in between.
Exactly. It's like a whole like a century in between.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean for us. Like the early 1900s has been a time period that really hasn't been explored for like black stories. It's like you might. I mean, if you're lucky, you're gonna get the Harlem Renaissance. You know, before you get to the civil rights, you know, movement. But yeah, we wanted to explore that time period and definitely tell that story from a black woman's perspective.
And I mean, the other thing is that you would think that the struggles that she had are antiquated, you know what I mean? But today we're struggling, not even struggling, but there are times when we're like negotiating for ourselves, or, you know, speaking up for pay that we deserve in these workspaces, in these spaces, or we're, you know, we got Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and we have real issues with gender, you know, boxes that are placed around us as African American women in particular. And this story, even though it was over 100 years ago, there's a lot that is echoed, you know, in what's happening with us today in the spaces that we work with. And one of the things too, like, that I love about that is that, like, you hear a lot of like, oh, but we've already told stories in that time. It's like, nah, but we weren't there. Like, I got a lot of that with the Wilds. They were like, fair enough, like, oh, we're in a post, like, Walking Dead and post-Romero world. And I'm like, but where are the black people? Like, how about we have a choice now?
Well, all the black people in Walking Dead are the actual zombies.
No, all the black people made it out.
Right.
I'm retconning that. We all made it out. We were like, look at them running around and killing each other. I got that.
But see, but what's so amazing about the Wilds is that your zombies grow flowers. They don't, their skin doesn't fall off. They just start growing.
They're scarier to me because, you know, one of the things that we wanted to explore in that, because that's right, zombies have been done, steampunk has been done. Well, what would it be like to be in a world, again, through this perspective of kind of like femme and queer and brown? Oh, well, the dangers that you face are not always the most, like, obvious. Like, you know, we talk about, you know, racism all the time, and it's like people think that it's just this one thing where people are running around in hoods and like that is ugly, but like it's not just those ugly things, it's those little microaggressions. It's not being able to be in the stories. It's being told, well, why would we need a steampunk story with black people? Like, we told steampunk, well, because now you have a choice.
Right, and it's frustrating when you get those descriptions in some of those comics, because we got like what, 10 Iron Man, and what we're getting a fifth Ghostbusters movie. Like those things can be rebooted and redone, but all you're trying to do is one story based on one thing. In many of the stories that you write, they're not always all black women. How do you write for the other? Are you writing white characters and other characters into your stories, or are you only writing your stories about black women or LGBTQ characters, or you know, how do you write for the other? I'll say.
Well, I do, but I think it's always about resonating with another person. Like, we're human beings at the end of the day, and if you can't identify with the human condition, something's wrong with you. That's just as a person-to-person thing. When you see someone in pain, you know, you see a physical wound on somebody, it's like, oh my God, that must hurt. Yeah, it does. Like, yeah, it does. Like, I can imagine how it hurts. I mean, I know someone in the room probably has flinched when they've seen something that's just so like off-putting or gross. You see some type of foot hanging off or something on the TV. It's like, oh my God, you know, you wince. It's the same thing when you're creating characters. I think you should do research. You should talk to people who are either, you know, outside of your race, or who, if I'm heterosexual, I speak to a queer person. But at the same time, we're human beings. So for me, maybe for me, it's just obvious. But I've also been in the position of like having panels and hosting panels, and some male will come up and ask and say, well, how do you write female characters? I'm like, are you kidding? Like, what kind of question is that?
But is that because as black women we're used to thinking for everybody in the room?
Yes.
Well, let's be fair though. Like, I think that there are certain. I mean,
You got Ice Queen sitting next to you.
I love you guys Switch so much. But I think that we are expected, not just as you know, brown people, but just there are different levels of empathy that are expected for different people, right? And it doesn't mean that you're not capable of empathy if it's not expected of you. In fact, I know many people who are in that position who are very empathetic, right? But I mean, the answer is yes, but also we are asked to be Elliot on that bicycle, even though he was out after dark, so I don't believe that's a black person at all. Well, we're expected to, we were asked forever, since Homer, to put ourselves into those shoes, so we practiced at it. It's a muscle. Go to the gym, do the work. Like you said, research, but also respect, right? Like, when I'm writing characters that are different from me, whether they be black or East Asian or South Asian or, you know, white or whatever their experience is that ain't mine, like, gotta be respectful. You know, no one's saying you can't write people that are different than you. You can write about people that are different than you can't write from, but like, just watch a movie and talk to people that are different than you.
I mean, it's true, and then, I mean, as a creator, like, these are your babies, you know what I mean? Like, you're creating them. Like, if I can create a character, I gotta get in their head, I have to sympathize with them, I have to love them, I have to get mad at them, you know what I mean? I have to, whatever I have to do to, like, bring them to life in a real way that resonates with people. And if you are, like, if you call yourself a creator and you, like, and you can't get into the head of your character, then you're doing the character a disservice. You know what I mean? And even if you have to do some research, you know, watch a YouTube video. You know what I mean? Like, get out.
Yeah, you know, the internet, so helpful.
Yeah. Google is free.
Yeah, it's just this thing. Yeah, it's so strange when people are like, I have no idea where you found that information. I'm like, the same way you found the address to this building, Google. Like, I don't. We're gonna take some questions soon, not just yet. So if you have a question, if you can make your way to these one of these two.
Black kid and it's slavery, everybody's like, so, tell me about this. Like, I know we're not a monolith. So I ask my friends, even with wash day, like I literally sent them a survey to see what their wash day routine was like, because I wanted it as close to a larger experience as possible. And also knowing like I can't serve everybody's experience, and that's fine. But as long as I can tell this one as true as I can, then I'm okay with that. And I think it's knowing that too, is like even with, when I'm writing Black characters, I need to do research if it's not, something that's really close to my own experience. So it's the same work we have to do no matter what the person's background is. Of course, if they're outside of our experience, you gotta do some more work, and you have to treat it with a lot more sensitivity as well. I think you really...
This is like creating your own work, creating your own indie comic is like birthing a kid. Like, I'm not saying it's the same amount of pain, but I'm saying financially, you can feel like it.
we could do Kickstarters for kids.
I know, right?
We're almost there.
But there's all this talk about like, oh, well, it's so difficult out there and I'm not getting support from other people. But on my end, I'm not a creator. I just talk about them and help them. But on my end, whenever I'm doing things like this in other spaces where I'm the only one, I tell people, roll deep. I show up with people and they're on the panel with me, or they're with me, or they're helping facilitate things and meeting people. How can you do that as creators? How can you help other Black female writers do what you do?
Introduce them to Regine.
Well, I was going to say, Regine didn't have to answer this question. She's got an entire convention that does this. But
she did this
my first panel,
yeah,
ever years ago in the Bronx. Like, put me on. She's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, she put us on in San Diego at San Diego Comic-Con. Like, yeah.
Roll deep. I mean, that's what it is. Like, find resources. Regine is very good, not just at facilitating like panels and that kind of stuff, but she, Women in Comics International is an amazing resource.
Geek Girl Brunch.
Geek Girl Brunch. I want to say Black Girl Brunch, and I was like, that ain't it. That ain't it. But that's an incredible resource.
And it's all over the country. Like, I've been to the world. Oh, it's all over the world. Yes. No, I've been to conventions all over. It's like, are you going to the Geek Girl Brunch thing? I'm like, is one here too?
Yeah.
Talk to Camilla Zhang, who helps people with Kickstarters, people that need this kind of help. I mean, mostly Regine knows the doorway. Well, I mean, I'm sure that I would love to hear stories from y'all too, but like, I get people reaching out to me on Twitter all the time, being like, and
the Men's Society, and that was created by Sherilyn Eaton, and she's a writer for DC Comics right now.
Yes. So I'm looking for any questions. I think I see a question out there. Woohoo! Come on down. Anybody wants a question needs to get to the mic quickly, because otherwise we will keep talking.
Is that N. Stephen Harris?
Oh, but you're gonna leave though.
Sorry.
If anybody has a question, I'm telling you, get to the mics fast, otherwise we're gonna talk. There we go. Hi. You gotta say your name first.
Hi, my name is Shiju. I'm sorry that was very loud.
It's okay. Hi.
Thank you guys all for being here. This is magnificent, and we really appreciate it. You guys all sound and seem phenomenal. I'm gonna actually read the question off the phone because it's on behalf of my friend who's trying to come up here.
That's fine.
How do you balance maintaining comics as an avenue of escapism for Black people while still trying to tell stories that are true to the experiences and relatable? See, it's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. It is a good question.
I just try to stay as authentic as possible to my experience and some of the things that I've been through. Even though like my stories are like kind of fantastical, I do horror and I do science fiction, but there's still adversity in space. There's still adversity in horror, and I try just to touch on that the best that I can while interweaving real life experiences.
Put humor in your sad stuff. That's how I do. If it's sad, have some happiness. Have someone have a moment where they kiss a loved one, or eat a sandwich that they really like, or tell a joke. Like, you can't. Sometimes it gets heavy, and you're like, I need that moment of just levity to breathe.
Yeah, we've told stories that are full of adventure, but also more personal things. Sort of one story in one of the anthologies for Ladies' Night actually was about loss and gun violence in Oakland, California, which is where we're from. It was called Good Night, Jacob, and we also like to bring elements from like our own childhood. We've done tributes to our grandmother, who was like a big influence in our life in growing up. So we've done westerns, including our grandmother and her sister, Jessie and Bessie, who were also twins back in the day. And it was just sort of a tribute to her. So we like to weave in our own personal narratives as well as real life sort of stories into the fantastical.
I think when so I have Wash Day and Wobble D 3000, and they're two very different comics, but both of them, my goal was for Black and Latino women to be seen. So with Wash Day, it was about like black hair care, natural hair, and with Wobble D 3000, which is a sci-fi twerking tale, I wanted to...
Did y'all know that? It's a sci-fi twerking tale.
Yes. I went through my own experience trying to twerk through songs, and I was not fit enough, and I was struggling halfway through. And I know so many other people go through that, so I wanted to do a fun comic about that as well. And I think it's important for us, especially as Black and brown creators, to create stories that are important, but also like really fun too, which I think is important as well. I don't think I feel like a lot of the times the ones that get the most attention are about race or racism, and I don't think we need to feel like that's the avenue we have to go in order for it to be impactful to somebody. Right. I mean, I really hope somebody reads Wobble D 3000. It's like, yes, I feel this.
And I would say trust your voice, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And then sometimes you create a comic and you get it out there and you do it, and a couple of years later you look back and you're like, oh, I can work on doing this, or I can tweak this in my style. So it's just like doing it and getting it out there is just the first step. And don't worry about like how it'll be received or perceived, or if you're hitting all the marks. It's just like the more you do it, the better you become. So just do it.
Thank you. What's your question over here?
Both of us do. We're super independent. We've been paying for everything, doing everything like forever, But it was shaking fingers, shaking, wobbling knees, like for like 2 months straight. We started, Kickstarter. We did a video. We were like, it took us a year before we even released the video. Part of it was timing, and then we would be like, who's gonna give to the campaign? Like, what if it's only your mom? Right, and our mom gives like $50, and then that's it, you know what I mean? So it's like, you have to, I think it's just living in general. I feel like once you push beyond fear. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like fear, and it's just beyond, this is beyond comics. It's like, when you get fearful, you just gotta push yourself. Okay, so what? I'm gonna fall on my face and make a fool out of myself. You know what I mean? That's just the worst they can, what are they gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, even if we didn't make our goal, it was like we tried, you know what I mean? And just by just taking that one leap, it's gotten us here, it's gotten so much to happen. And if we would have just stayed fearful, shaking, and just, looking at the video and critiquing, how shiny our foreheads were, which they are now, I'm sure, but it's just like, no, you just gotta get beyond it, just continue in every aspect of life to push.
It's like if you're not pushing through fear, you're not growing. Like every time you leap, you know what I mean? Leap and the net will appear, they say. And even if you do fail, it's like there's something you can learn from that. You can learn next time. And I just say you just get out of your own way. If you're failing,
you're doing something. You know what I mean? At least you're moving forward. So fear is like, it's crippling. It stops people from doing a lot of stuff. You're worried, what will they say? What will they think? Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Just do it. And just, push the fear aside.
I'm still scared though. Like,
go away. And that goes away. But the other thing is, the truth is, you're always scared.
Yeah, that's the truth.
That's the other thing. People are just like, oh, people make it look easy. But it's just like, we're just doing it. Shoot, we're just moving.
So maybe it's less of learning how to not be scared and learning how to work through that fear. Because it sounds like the fear is always a program running in the background.
I'll also say too, are you from New York? I'm also from New York. And I get scared all the time, and then as a New Yorker, I think you just go from scared to mad. You reach your critical mass, and you're like, you know what? I'm done. And I think that's just the thing we do, learning how to harness that as well. Where you're like, you know what? Fudge it. I'm gonna do that, you know what I mean? I'm gonna spite. I use spite. That's my secret. That's my Hulk secret. I'm always spiteful. I'm always spitey. How many people told you couldn't do it? Alright, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm afraid, but now, do you have this? No? Alright, cool. I'm gonna keep doing it.
And also, don't forget, there's always an audience for something. There's a comic out right now that I believe it's on its 3rd volume, and it's called Snot Girl. I'm not lying. And she's a superhero. And you can just imagine what her superpower is.
Her superpower
and
is
it's on volume 3. So somebody may and you have to not think about the people that are right here. Right. The internet is huge. There could be somebody in England or Australia or some other part of the planet that loves what you do.
And the people, when people are mean to you, in person, you hurt, but then you're also all right, well, you're not my friend anyway, I don't are you paying my rent?
Okay?
No.
Also remember,
I'm very gentle inside, I'm very soft.
You're not alone. That's number one. You're in a room full of creators, and there's creators outside of this room, of course, that are here at the show. And we all have a degree of fear. But it's just like the Gibbs sisters said, you have to push through. If you want people to see your work, if you want it to see the light of day, you do have to push through it. It gets easier, I promise you that. It gets easier as you put yourself out there more, but it's definitely a necessity if you want to get into this industry, or any industry for that matter.
I would say too, it's really important to have friends and family that you can go to hype you up when you're feeling really down.
Right, girl.
See, there they go.
There you go.
And if you don't have those friends and family close to you, you may find them online.
Yes, yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that go through this that don't have people around them that support them. And to step out on that, you might find friends in, other writing groups and things like that. Geek Girl Brunch.
Find your tribe.
Yes, find your tribe.
I want to add to that too, that we do have our own writers groups. We've been in many in LA. But when we started doing the work, and this is one thing I'm going to say, doing the work and then putting it out there, we started self-publishing. And at the end of last year, we got our first book deal. You know what I mean? It was with a major publisher, Houghton Mifflin, Versify, and we're working on our young adult graphic novel. And that's just by doing the work and just staying focused on the goal. And then the other thing is, once we left and we actually pressed go on the Kickstarter, there was a community that showed up, you know what I mean? The Blur community just was yeah! And Black Girl Nerds, Nerds of Prey, Regine, bunch of other people just were yes, we're here for it. And that just, kept going and created a lot of different opportunities for us. So I'm gonna say, we've been at it for years before that. So just keep doing the work. Don't worry about it. You'll get better and better and better and better, and community will pop up around you, and lots of things will happen, but you just gotta take the first steps.
Thank you for your question.
Before I go, if you guys can come to my exhibition next week.
That's okay, girl. Shoot your shot.
I'm pieces, my abstract art pieces. I would love for you guys. All of you guys can come. It's free. It's on 92nd Street in Amsterdam. 92nd Street in Amsterdam.
What's your name, sweetheart? What's your name?
My name is Cristal J. Tejeda, and I am an artist, and I want to be like you guys.
You have a question over here? Thank you for being patient. What's your question?
Okay, where do you sell your product?
Good question.
No, you know why? Look, these graphic novels cost $35. Where do you sell the product?
No, does anybody up here have $35 comic? Nobody up here sells anything for $35.
They don't go through Forbidden Planet or any of the stores here in the city. Because you can't go out and buy any of these graphic novels for... I mean, when I was buying comic books, 50 cents.
Yeah, they were cheaper. Yeah, absolutely.
But now, I know this is Forbidden Planet, I can't afford to buy any of this.
Well, some of the comics, there's also different sizes of comics. There's issues that are the smaller, like 17-page, 22-page comics. Those are always going to be less than $5. If they're not, somebody's ripping you off. There's TPBs, which are larger, and those usually run between
between
$15
and $20.
Yeah, now if
That's
something is $35, that sounds like an omnibus, which is like a huge.
Where do these kids who don't work? I've worked my entire life in America. I don't have money to buy these graphic novels.
Well, don't.
Yeah, libraries will get them.
Libraries for
Yes.
In New York City, they're all stolen.
If you request them at your library, though, they have to get them back in, and that is something actually I wanted to say, and that is a really good point. Libraries for trade paperbacks, that's the collections. If you ask for them, they will get them in, and that helps us as well.
And if they're taken, they will get another one.
Yeah, they'll get new copies. And also, I know I donate.
It's not a comic book.
Oh, it's just the collection of the singles, so it'll be like 4 or 5 comic books together.
That have been bound together in one larger comic.
So yeah, you can definitely get them through the library. I know I donate to schools. I sometimes get free, like my comp copies. I'll give them to schools. I'll give them to Regine to give to her students and stuff. And
but to answer your question, I believe everybody's comics are available online.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Ma'am, to answer your question.
We have a copy of E.J. Whitaker here for you.
It's right here.
For free. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. You gotta give her a comic.
It's right here.
What's your question, ma'am?
Hi.
Robin. Hi, what's your name?
I'm Robin Smith. She's an amazing artist. She illustrated Wash Day.
What?
So cartoonist. Okay,
Thanks for being
continue.
Well, I mean, I'm the illustrator, but I'm not the writer.
Okay, we're not playing this game.
My question is really about what's your process for editing dialogue? Because I feel like whenever I'm writing comics, I stay away from fiction because in my head I'm like, oh, here are all these sentences and all these things I would like them to communicate with each other. But then it's impossible to pare it down to regular conversation. So
trust the artist.
how do you do that?
Trust the artist. The art will tell. I start out with a bunch of dialogue on the page, and by the time that it's ready to go to print, it is a sixth of what was on the page because the artist knows how to convey that visually in a way that I could never even begin to know.
And also, aren't you limited when you do scripts for comics? Like, I believe the script itself, you limit yourself for how many bubbles you're giving yourself. Am I wrong?
Some people do.
You try.
Well, I'll say this. When I first started writing comics, because I came from writing prose, I was writing a whole bunch of crap on the page. Just everything, the kitchen sink, whatever. But I learned how to pare it down. And with my scripts, I do give a certain amount of instructions. So I will say, like, well, someone's frustrated. Someone's brow is furrowed. And so if they're saying stop that, and they're not saying cute, like stop that, like they don't have a cute little look on their face, like no, like I want them to be angry. So that's how I sort of pared down the dialogue. I just tried to put in instruction for more facial expressions and the way their bodies are situated on the page. So that's how I help myself doing that, and my scripts are so much better for it.
I try to think about how I talk with my friends and how my friends talk. I mean, right now my comics have been something that a lot of my friends could fit in the comics, so it's been a bit easier. But I also really rely heavily on the artist and thinking of like, this is a comic, so I don't need to use words if I don't want to, or if it's not necessary. You know that, Robin, because Wash Day does not have a ton of dialogue. And you beautifully illustrated the nuance of the whole story. And also get a great editor. Get an editor. Like, even if you can't afford like a full editor, you know, fully edit like from the script to the page, at least have them review the script once to give you some feedback, because J.A. McLean edited Wash Day and Wobble Thief the script, and it would be a very different comic if she did not edit it.
Does Women in Comics have editors that I don't want to say that you can recommend, but are there editors that are involved with Women in Comics?
Oh, absolutely. We have members that are editors, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So if you're looking for an editor, call Regine.
I was going to say our process is a little different because we work remotely, back and forth. There are times when I'm watching Janae read the script. I mean, this is like, oh my God. Or like she'll be watching me and we're editing each other's, you know, as I write. Sometimes she'll go over and read, or as she writes, I'll go over and read things, and you can just see an X go immediately through. I'll be on Google Docs, right? And sometimes she's just like, oh no, you know, or we're having to, and then you'll just see an X, or you just, you know, see somebody and they're like, delete. So, I mean, it's a great process, and I think it's just a matter of like the pacing of the story. You know, we'll go back and sort of work things out and just make sure that we give the story room to breathe while also adding dialogue, or if it's an intense dialogue scene, allowing that to happen, but also, like you guys said, relying on the artist to help convey that.
And sometimes, I'm sorry, sometimes when the pages come back, like when you've given the work to an artist and you've got way too much dialogue in the bubble, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, I gotta cut some stuff out. You know what I mean? And sometimes that informs how you can trim your stuff down.
So we're gonna
Comic-Con in Chicago, which you may know about, which is happening again in July of this year. So I wanted to talk to you about collaboration between different Comic-Cons and women's groups, etc. Although I think you mentioned women's groups. Shout out to this guy over here with the hat and glasses, who kindly let me go. I know we had a question as well. So.
Oh, thank you. So your question is how to collaborate with other conventions, or how to collaborate as creators?
With other conventions.
I'll try this one. And you've actually done this before.
Well, I reach out to them when they reach out to me. As I see like different ads for different things, like I'll go or I'll get invited to different places, like Blur City Comic Con, Bronx Heroes Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con even, or New York Comic Con. Like sometimes I'll get people to reach out to me, or I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I have this idea, let's have this maybe collaborative event, let's have an art show, let's have some type of sip and see or something, and I just see what bites. Someone might say no, others might say yes. I'm thankful that everyone says yes. So that's how it works for me.
It depends on what you want to, from my perspective, it depends on what you want to collaborate on. So you can actually have a table at another convention, and many times smaller conventions will let you do that. One of the niches I think that you have is that the Women in Comics, brand, especially when people are looking for more female creators, they will have you there. I think if you're looking to collaborate with other cons, you might not want to collaborate with other cons to do the exact same thing that you do. That's one way of doing it. And then if you want to collaborate with other cons and do the exact same thing that you do, you might want to try and find, if you said you're in Chicago, right? Or Wakanda Con is in Chicago?
I'm in New York.
You're in New York, okay. So Wakanda Con is in Chicago, this is New York. If there was another, I'm thinking of like ECBOC in Philadelphia, if there was another convention or event that, let's say you met with the heads of, all three conventions, and you had not necessarily a convention, but let's say a meet and greet, or like you said, an art gallery opening, or something that benefits the community or the artists that is not in the city that each of you are all in, that's advertising even for each of your conventions. That's just another idea.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question. And thank all of you for coming to the Black Contract Festival.